Morning, everybody, or good afternoon, good evening, good early morning, wherever you are in the world. We're happy to have you here. It's day 2 of the Scrabble Players Championship 2025 Collins Division, coming at you live from Baltimore, Maryland. We've got, I think, 4 games for you this morning, 3 more games in the afternoon, so another full day of Scrabble action. My name is Charles Reinke. I'm joined in the commentary booth this morning by Matthew O'Connor. Matthew, how are you feeling?
I'm excited. It's going to be a great day. We've got day 2 of the Scrabble Players Championship. We've got some exciting games coming ahead, some past champs, some up and comers. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, I think every game in a Collins division that is this stacked is going to be a good one. No doubt that the games we're going to see this morning are going to be awesome. Our first round matchup is Samson Okosagah versus Alec Sjoholm. Matt, do you want to tell us a little bit about these players?
Sammy is from Nigeria. He's a legend there. I think he won Nigerian nationals several times in the 90s before he moved to the U.S. Alec Sjoholm has won the NWL event here before. Now he's trying to win Collins, and he looks like he's in a pretty good spot to do so, starting at 6-1.
Yeah, I think Alec came in third last year, so he's been on the cusp a few times at least. He's looking to change that this time and win the whole thing. So it looks like these players are about ready to go, so I think we can get underway.
I'm excited. Yeah, let's do it. It looks like we gave them the go-ahead, and Sammy is about to draw tiles.
His tile drawing technique of holding the bag somewhat upside down makes me a little bit nervous. I think there is an issue with a lost E tile yesterday. So hopefully all 100 are in there.
Yeah, hopefully.
All right, clock is started. Sammy's starting to draw tiles. It looks like a lot of high-scoring constants to start. Oh, but some nicer constants to go with those. He's going to have some options here.
Yeah, the first thing that jumps out to me is maybe Whiten. I don't think there's quite a way to get rid of all 3 of the higher point ones and go for a bingo. So 32 points for Whiten seems pretty nice to me.
Yeah, I think that seems pretty straightforward. You could maybe think about just playing white, but BN together is not an especially good 2-tile combination. It feels like you could just take the 2 extra points with white and not set up those extra hooks.
Yeah, I like the idea of Whiten. I always look for a short open, but I don't think there's a good one that exists here.
We see Sammy setting up Henbit on his rack. That is probably a significant downgrade just because the W is considerably worse than the B. So we hope he takes a little bit more time on this turn.
Yeah, the B is sometimes a sneaky bingo tile. It exists in the able and ible suffixes. It ends up being a lot better for bingoing than the W. But Sammy's putting down white, and we like this choice.
Switching over to Alec, he does sort of have a what looks like it could be bingo letters, but sadly too many vowels to really make it work. My first thought, and it looks like he's got it set up. I don't know if that's intentional or accidental. It's just playing the weird 4-vowel uoi. Looks like he's strongly considering that.
Yeah, it looks like he's lucked out a little and gotten a pretty nice place for it. I think if you put it on top of the first 4 letters in white, and it scores 20 points.
Yeah, we see it come down, and I think this makes a lot of sense. ELS is a very good, very potent 3-tile combination for bingos. And if you can get 20 points doing your 4-vowel dump, it seems pretty clear to me.
Yeah, I would say so. Sammy might be struggling a little with some clunky tiles. The first thing that jumps out to me is bait on top of uoi, but that's not fun. Still might be the best choice.
Yeah, the W doesn't have a lot of upside on this board early in the game. There's not a hot spot for it, whereas there is that hot spot you mentioned for the B. So he might just have to hold his nose and hold on to the W for another turn and hope something good happens for him next turn. It is a little bit annoying sometimes to play off a W and then immediately draw another one because that really does tank your bingo chances. But he might be faced with keeping it just one more turn.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to have to decide between the play of Ba, which scores two more and keeps one pointers, but pretty bad ones, and Bait, which keeps the W one more turn, but it's at least a little more balanced. I like the choice of Bait.
Yeah, definitely. The W isn't great, but keeping two I's and an O is probably worse. So I like this choice also.
Alec with a rack that looks good, but it's one of those pretty, maybe famous, attractive looking racks that doesn't quite have a bingo in it, and I don't think there's any way to get a 9 or an 8 down, so he's probably stuck with some less fun options where he might have to just score 6 points with something like Lev on top of EW or Boyle, maybe drop the D instead.
Yeah, this is a tough turn. It definitely does feel like just making a one tile play is strong here. He does have bingo lines under Whiten and on top of Bait. I guess maybe one downside on this board, there's not a lane for a 7 ending in an S. So he does have to kind of take that into consideration if he wants to try to make a new one. Doing something like ED, I don't know if that would ever be justified, but that would be one way to guarantee that you have a very simple bingo line to hit. Yeah, it's kind of a tough turn for Alec.
Although I wonder if opening up a pure ending in S lane is actually needlessly open. I wonder if maybe Alec bingos no matter what, anyways, and so he actually wants it to be a little bit tighter because his leave is so good. He can figure something out on the tighter board, anyways, with on top of Bait and Whitens being available to him.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, Matt. The situation's not dire enough in terms of bingo lines where he needs to do something drastic, like set up a very easy S hook with a leave like Lister. A lot of his bingos are just simply going to play in one of the two current bingo spots. If he does something like, if he just plays
Yeah.
off the L or the D, lots of his bingos still play in those spots.
And one option we didn't even discuss is actually red bait on top of EW and UH. That would be 23 points and still keep a decent leave. So that's actually another excellent choice. But Alec is going to go with Boyle.
Yeah, I think this is decent enough. It does set up sort of another lane for S bingos, although not ending with an S, and keeps a very, very strong leave.
Yeah, Alec is probably very relieved he did not fish off the D. He would have been stuck with another almost bingo rack if he did so. Instead, he's got strived, diverts, or verdicts.
We see Sammy here has drawn some. Well, these seem to be a decent set of consonants. The K should provide some scoring on this turn. He's got that spot above Bait where he can just hit a double word score. He does have cool setup on his rack. That's going to score 30 points if he decides to go for it. Some scoring play that plays two of his scoring consonants seems like the decision here.
And Sammy's in a spot where he probably wants to try to be defensive after Alex Fish, but I don't think there's any realistic way to do so. There's S hooks that are probably far enough apart that there's no way to really block everything. So he's going to end up playing Milk to get rid of some of his high pointers.
Well, it looks like he's actually going for Milko.
Milko.
I think that this is a decent idea. It does block the maybe one of the easiest bingo lines on the board on top of Bait. It does float an O out in space, which might help your opponent in certain situations, but scores decently. Sadly, still keeps the W. We'll see how much longer that stays on his rack, but this is a pretty good choice.
Yeah, and Alec with what seems to be 3 similar scoring spots for Strived, it's probably going to be about what he wants to do to the board. think he's probably roughly a coin flip, maybe a slight favorite either way. So I don't think he's going to be thinking too much about long term openness or closedness.
Yeah, we see he picks one relatively quickly. He's pluralizing boils or pluralizing boil, going for one of his two 80-point options. So this is as good as he's going to do. This one maybe slightly more closed up than pluralizing whiten.
Yeah, I think I like the idea. I think it probably sets up a little bit less in the immediate term. No triple and no floaters. So I like the idea here. And Sammy with a rack, he probably needs to get rid of the W and B before he thinks about bingoing. So web strikes me as the kind of word I would be thinking about playing.
Yeah, are you thinking maybe web understrived?
I think that seems like a pretty good choice. A, C, D, E is not fantastic, but there's a solid chance of bingoing with it. They're pretty friendly to bingos.
Yeah, one downside of web is it does kind of set up an easy scoring spot immediately underneath. You could easily see like a 40-point play coming back, like involving an F or an X, something like that. So, but the other plot space to play web is just on top of Milko, and that has its own downsides. So Sammy's going to do some thinking here to see if it's still worth playing those plays.
Yeah, I think it's one of those situations where maybe all of the available options open up something, and that maybe makes web a little more palatable. One option we haven't discussed yet, if you want to go more defensive, is bowed, Bowed through the O in Milko. A little bit tighter in the short term, still keeps a pretty solid leave, scores comparably and maybe a little less, but it is going to be a solid amount more defensive in the short term, which we might like.
Yeah, I'm looking at that play, the more I kind of like it. It does put Sammy up just by a little bit on a board he's keeping decent letters, and Alex Rack is a little bit random. You don't want to make things too easy for your opponent, so something like Bowd might be a good option here.
And we're going to see it in real time. If he plays bowed, he's going to cut off the obvious scoring opportunity for Alec, which would involve making Joe with the O in Milko and the J on his rack. So, yeah, a lot of this short-term defensive stuff has an obvious advantage to it. We can see it pretty clearly this time with the contents of Alec's rack.
Yeah, Alec doesn't really have a whole lot going on with the J other than that spot, so he's going to be a little bit disappointed if that spot goes away. Sammy doesn't, of course, know the exact contents of Alec's rack. That would be cheating, but he does, kind of have a general idea of good stuff that's still in the bag. So Sammy's actually going for something we didn't think about, just playing Baud here, which scores, I think that's his highest scoring play, Matt, 32 points, but has some downsides in terms of opening up the triple and the spot on top of Baud.
Yeah, I like the idea of scoring as many points as you can. I just worry CEE, a third E could make your rack go sour pretty fast. Alec with G on top of Baud, that is the thing that kind of strikes me as the most obvious play. And
yeah, the O on top of Milko went away, but we got a new J hotspot, so it seems it's a choice between Ja or G. I think he's definitely going to go for G here. I guess he could maybe play G'd. That is 10 fewer points. Yeah, I guess he's probably not going to play that.
Yeah, I think JEE, it's hard to think of what else he would be doing here. It's also, it closes some bingo lanes. It closes something, maybe forming OBO. So that's worth something. And yeah, I guess it at least turns the triple lane into non-bingo triples. It's probably a little harder to use that. So I like the idea of G, and I don't think there's really another obvious choice.
Yeah, I think that this has to be the play. We see Sammy. He did draw that third E, as you mentioned, but that's not the real rack killer here. The real rack killer was the Q draw.
Yeah,
with
but
nowhere for chi. So
there's an interesting option here. It depends on how big of a heart we'll say Sammy has. What do you think about En on top of G?
ooh, that is
I think if it were Nigel, it would have already been on the board. But
that is very very
it's
clever.
courageous, we'll say. I think it's correct. It's a little bit tricky to have an E and an S, and I don't think G necessarily implies an E because of how many points it scores. I think it's kind of nuts, but he has to do it.
Yeah, that is actually a very creative option because you get that new ES spot making SNED and U, which I guess is just a more intense form of U with two E's. You
Yeah,
still got the Q, but if I guess he's got a guaranteed play of C's there the next turn at the very least. That's got to score almost 50, right?
it's 49 if it doesn't get blocked. I think that would have been risky, but I think that would have been a great choice. Also, would have been really fun to have on stream. And yeah, it does absolutely slaughter my sim. I think that would have been super awesome to see on stream. One fun thing about the new dictionary is that we've finally gained the ability to express our displeasure with multiple W's as well as multiple E's.
Yeah, the EWW doesn't come up very often, but when it does, yeah, you're really happy that it's there.
And Sammy with almost an embarrassment of riches, the Q, X, and Z. Don't think this is the worst board to sit on them either. He can play things like X'd through the E and strived and the E and seeds and kind of be a little bit patient and maybe wait for a bingo once he gets rid of all his clunk. He can also fish for Sank through the C if that stays open.
Yeah, there's a little bit of upside here for some of his scoring tiles. Meanwhile, Alec, it's got some duplicates, two G's, two L's, and just the one vowel being the A. Uh, I guess my first inclination would be I'm looking through that E of seeds that just got put out there. What can I do with my H in that spot? There's not a ton of other scoring spots on the board that he can really access, so that would be my first inclination. But really, his only option there is just playing Hell, Hell. That has some pretty obvious downsides. It takes an O. I think in the new latest update, it also takes an A in addition to an S, which it's always taken. So that's a little bit scary for Alec. I wonder if he
Yeah,
has anything else.
this is one of those spots where you can't make a setup just because you have it. You have to think, oh, wait, this takes so many hooks. It's very likely he has one. And he does, in fact, have an A. So it might not work out as well as you would hope, given that it just takes too many hooks. So I like maybe a little bit tighter, maybe even like Gled. Gled is kind of not super inspiring, but that leaf might be one of the maybe sneaky good ones. One eye away from a little bit more obvious bingos type of rack.
Yeah, I think that's actually a decent idea. It does get rid of the duplicate G and the duplicate L. And as you say, Matt, if you draw an I, you might have sort of an outside chance at I and G bingos. But at the very least, you're sort of keeping up the scoring pressure. He doesn't have any standout scoring plays here, so it's a little bit easier on a turn like this to just take 18 and move on.
Yeah, you
So
can maybe try to iterate through the possibilities. IR is a pretty likely leave, and that sets up ring hauls. EI sets up healings. There's quite a few choices. Alec is going with Chawl, another good option, scoring as much as he can.
yeah, again, we talked about it earlier. Sometimes it's just you just want to score as many points as you can. This play does exactly that.
And Sammy with a little bit of a easier choice, given that that play is there. Hard to argue in favor of anything else, really, when you have 64. We know what Will Anderson likes to say about high scoring plays.
Remind the audience what Will Anderson likes to
Will
say about high
Anderson,
scoring plays.
Will Anderson would do many things for 64. And Alec with one single bingo, one of those tricky ones because it's hard to remember if the ing words take an S, but his play of gloving does take an S. Charles, is there any argument in favor of not bingoing, being patient? I don't think there is this time because the bingo is pretty defensive in nature.
Yeah, and the thing is, Alec doesn't have plays really elsewhere on the board. If he doesn't bingo this turn, I mean, it is kind of an open question whether he's confident enough of glovings to actually put it on the board, since they are playing 5 point challenge. It's very likely that Sammy would challenge. It's just a weird looking INGS word, so Alec has to be pretty sure of it to play it. But there's not too much else he can do here. The only open vowel that he can really work with his constant heavy rack is again the E of seeds. Playing there would block the lane for eights ending in S. So he would
Yeah.
probably want to avoid that. And there's not too much else to do. Maybe Vide in the top right is an outside chance of working out.
Yeah, I don't think that the triple on the top right is volatile enough to make me feel like I need to block it. I think if I knew glovings, it would be the choice, but that is a tricky one. It's very, very hard to remember which ing words are words. Once you get past the obvious ones like hearing, it is pretty random, it feels like.
Yeah, I just looked it up and it says, well, gloving is the act or the craft of making gloves, and the S is only Collins. So I'm not really surprised here that Alec is not playing the bingo.
Yeah, Sammy with a bit of an interesting choice because he has QIN, but he also has rezone for a lot more points. I like QIN. I think it's worth the sacrifice. And it leaves me with Res, which is a little bit unlikely to go anywhere, depending on what Alec does, especially if he bingos on the triple.
There are also a lot of ends still in the bag to redraw rezone, so it could still happen next turn.
Yeah. And Alec, this time he has no bingos. It's going to be more about how does Alec want to approach this? Does he want to be a little bit tighter, or does he want to be a little bit more open, given that he has the blank? I think, given his deficit and the fact that he has a blank, he's probably thinking about getting a bingo down.
Yeah, at this point he's now down by about 30 points, a little bit more. That's where you start feeling like a bingo would really be helpful. So I think his plays going forward until he does hit the bingo are going to be sort of designed around the idea of trying to get one sooner rather than later.
Yeah, definitely. I don't love the idea of something like Meg because it somewhat cuts off my S, but I do think it might be necessary. It's another one of those spots where, hey, I have the blank. I'm so likely to get something down, especially with Milko being there. There's ways to hit AN bingos ending in AN or AL. You know, you draw something like EI, ER, and then you at least have Reginald. Something like that will probably go down. Actually, ER giving him Langrels as well on the triple. That's a good
Yeah,
way to think about it. When you have a super good leave, you often actually don't mind a closed board because you will still get something down, and your opponent with a more random rack from your perspective will struggle a lot.
yeah, that all makes sense. Also, playing Meg here, the S isn't totally cut off. If he manages to draw an E, ES bingos are still extremely possible in that spot. He also kind of sets up a little bit of an escape valve for him. Meg takes an A. So if he needs to use that spot to make Mega, he's still got that in his back pocket.
Yeah, Sammy has one play. It's very open, and I'm not sure if I would feel like doing it after plays like Meg. But if he wants to score as many points as he can, the option is a Ronzer, which means somebody from the rest of New Zealand, which is just not Auckland. The opposite of a Ronzer is a Jaffa. You can look up that acronym on your own time.
but
Probably
not,
shouldn't say it on stream.
yeah, don't look it up on your work computer.
But there's also a strong argument in favor of something like Zori if you want to cut off the biggest bingo lane after a play like Meg.
Yeah, I feel like here the points with Ronzer are just it's so many points. It puts you up by a bingo basically. You're scoring 48. That feels like a lot to turn down here. I mean, Sammy should be rightfully concerned with Alec's recent pattern of play, which seems to indicate some fishing. But there's bingo lines on this board. This just puts a few more out there.
Yeah, I am in favor of Ronzer. Hey, 48 is almost a bingo anyways, and this helps him surge into the lead. Alec this time with bingos, I don't think we'll see him missing them this time. They're all pretty common words.
Yeah, the highest scoring bingo for Alec here is just planning through the newly created N of Ronzer. That's a very typical word, typical ing word. It would be very hard for a player of Alec's caliber to miss that.
Yeah, planning is probably the choice. I don't think there's any way to argue about passing up a bingo this time. I think we're just going to see him maybe iterate through the alphabet a little. Maybe he wants to touch the double word score in the lane with the E, but it does not exist. Looks like he's basically spelled out planning except for the somewhat wayward G.
Yeah, we hope when it hits the board that it's
But wait,
spelled
wait, he
correctly.
spelled plangent. He spelled plangent, I think.
Oh, okay.
Spelled planning.
Yeah, now we see the correct order of letters.
Yeah, now he's spelled planning, so that is what we're seeing.
And I think we do have a blank designation cam, but this one should be pretty obvious as long as Alec doesn't circle the wrong letter.
Yeah, we get to see in real time and we get to confirm he did it right, which is an underrated skill that top Scrabble players have. If you want to be like us, circle the blank correctly. Sammy with some clunk, but luckily the pool appears to be a bit vowel heavy. Be a little bit less worried about keeping consonants. Foot is the first thing that comes out to me.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty good option here. PRT is about the best leaf he could hope for with these letters, the duplicate O's and the duplicate T's. And he still will have the E of Ronzer to work with, at least for the start of his bingos, if the E appears early in the word. That feels pretty strong here.
Unfortunately, the E is going to be Alec. It's going to be help Alec more this time with Reunited. But foot is a good choice. I think it's the best. I like the idea of just scoring and also being okay with the consonants because there's vowels to come.
Oh, and we do see it mentioned in chat, and I'm seeing it now myself. Alec could play Reunited, but he's also got Intruder here. I think he's probably got to take the extra 8 points.
Oh yes, for sure. I just that was not the first bingo I saw. I think we'll see that pretty quickly.
Although he does have Reunited set up on his rack, maybe thinking about the merits of playing through the E versus the R if there's some kind of consideration of trying to block more bingos that way.
I don't know if you actually block more bingos because IER is actually still sitting there and Reunited also blocks the L. And Reunited also, the way to block the triple afterwards, you can play on the high scoring double area. So I don't actually think this is super defensive given what Intruder.
Yeah, I'm wondering if maybe he's concerned about Mega, but that seems like maybe a marginal consideration at this point. There's not any huge, like maybe Sammy will score 50 in a perfect situation in that spot, but more likely he's not going to be able to play there at all.
Yeah, Sammy is now in a weird spot. You know, it's one of those situations where it feels like maybe I can come back by making a few high-scoring plays, but that's going to be really tough. Um, I think I would be thinking about maybe getting rid of the letters in the word pry and trying for something up top.
Yeah, the scoreboard now is kind of a concern for Sam. He's down by about 50. The pool is exceptionally vowel heavy. That's got to play into his considerations quite a lot. 12 vowels to 7 consonants, meaning maybe keeping the P here is a little bit more decent than usual. He could do something like fry from the F of foot. That would block that triple line for bingos ending in ER, but does score pretty well, so hard to
Yeah,
say.
I don't hate the idea of Fry. I wonder what happens if Sammy plays Fry and then Alec takes the opportunity to play something on top, trying to block the Ami spot. It could get a little bit hairy, but I also just don't really know what else you would do if not Fry. It's hard to open up another lane, and Fry gives you an outside chance of coming back without a bingo if, say, Alec has too many vowels.
Yeah, there's something to be said for like inducing your opponent to making a low-scoring blocking play, and then you just come back naturally without a bingo, and that might be what happens after Alec. If Alec theoretically made a low-scoring play to block Ami, Sammy could just come back naturally from that.
Yeah, another option maybe Yip on the other side. But Sammy's drawn the blank. That's really, I'm sure, a welcome sight.
Yeah, that's going to make his life a lot easier here. Way more likely to bingo on this tight board if you got the blank to work with. He was retaining the A, which I think was a necessity on that turn to make sure that Ami stays available for him.
Yeah. And I think he's actually managed to draw bingo in two spots. He can play Garreter on the bottom, and he can play Prorate on the top. So he's managed to kind of show the advantage of Yip, which is that it leaves the R unimpeded in a way that Alec can't actually block everything now.
And yeah, we see Alec, he's got two S's, but the S's aren't doing a whole lot for him on this board. It's just basically another tile at this point. A flexible tile, but kind of just another tile. He's probably looking at plays underfoot. There's a few options for him that scored decently in that spot.
Yeah, what do you think about doing something very paranoid here? I don't think it makes sense because Yar blocks the R and scores a lot. I don't think there's really another choice, but what do you think about something like, say, forming anew? It does block a lot more bingos.
Yeah, that basically forces Sammy to have the perfect letters to play something to the R of Ronzer and score. It still scores decently. I
Yeah,
think there's a lot of merit for something like that.
this time it's Yara is going to work out better because Sammy happened to have a bingo in both spots, anyways. But wondering if maybe it's time to get a little bit paranoid, in honor of the late great Ozzy Osbourne.
Yep.
Paranoid. Yeah, Sammy getting his bingo down, and Alec. We're in the end game now, Charles. Without looking it up, who do you think is supposed to win this game if we see optimal play on both sides? It's
Oh,
very
that's a tough one. I guess not seeing a huge scoring play for Alec on this turn. I feel like it's Sammy's advantage, but
okay.
maybe there's something here for Alec that will bail him out of this. He'll
So what
definitely
about
be looking to go out first. So
Oases? What about Oases on the bottom? I think it's Alec's game because Oases plays on the bottom for a nice score, and I think it's just enough.
oh yeah, Oasis, a tough one to see. That one comes up so rarely, you almost forget about it. But it is 33 points, and keeping CU, he should be able to go out with something like Cup or Kerr. He's got a few different outs on the board.
Yeah, I think Oases is just enough. I don't think that's correct, though. There's another nice option Alec has. He could also play, what is it? He can play Ake through the H in Chal, which I think leaves outs in two spots. Sou, Sous. He can play it with news. He can play it on top of prorate. That's another nice out in two sequence.
Yeah, and Alex got to figure out if Sammy has any standout plays involving the F and the G. And it just seems like those tiles don't have a lot of upside on this board. He does
I
have to
think,
do his due diligence, but
yeah, I think Alec will be able to squeak it out. He has, I think, yeah, having run the end game, Alec has 12 winning plays, although a lot of them are variations of each other. A lot of them leave Oases as the second play and things like that. But he does have a couple of different options. It will be close no matter what. I like the idea of Oases. I saw it quickly, but that was very lucky by me. It just appeared. It's a tough one to see in game.
yeah, I think Alex definitely going to be looking at that spot. And if you're just sort of iterating through what letters go under these letters, you're maybe more likely to spot oases. You're like, well, only the E and the S can go after id, so that's kind of a starting point. Only the S can go after ye, so that's another starting point. So you kind of might build it iteratively, given enough time. We'll see what he comes up with.
Yeah, and you also have to make sure you see cup. It's not terribly hard to see, but you do need to make sure you have an outplay in two different spots if you're going to make a play like Oases. I think maybe something like scouse. If you know the tricky word scouse, it does make it a little more obvious that you're going to go out quickly, although you do have to see the tricky za and GAU spot to actually pull it out.
Oh yeah, that is kind of the key spot if you do something like scouts. I think any other play where he just drops the A would lose after that point, assuming that Sammy does find what I think would be his best play of just FOU on top of planning, making
Yeah,
floor.
and some of the winning plays are going to be tricky because it requires you to see a tricky outplay. For instance, one of Alec's winning sequences is crew through the R in prorate, which only wins because it sets up a second spot to play Ecru and Oases, as well as the one that currently exists on the triple. That's pretty tricky. Alec also has Souse spelled out, another good choice that will win the game by 4 points if both players play correctly.
Yeah, the key for that one is Alec finding, I guess, ACH next to DWAX. Since he's making this play, we assume that he sees his sequence.
Yes. Souse also played on the bottom, though I'm not sure if that would have been enough. I think it would have been. But yes, Souse is going to be just enough. A nice find by Alec in time trouble.
Yeah, he was not in drastic time trouble, but the clock was running down. He's under 4 minutes. Sammy's got 9 minutes to figure this out. We know from our end that there's no way he can pull this off, but he can at least, make it interesting. He can force Alec to find his highest scoring outplay, which is 20 points for Ak. Playing something like Goaf, GOAF, looks to be his best end game here.
Yeah, I think so. That's probably going to be one better than. He has a couple of options on top of planning, forming floor. I think that's going to be one worse because it scores 3 more, but it keeps an extra G on the rack, which would give Alec 4 extra points. So I believe if Sammy can find Goaf on top of Souse, he will lose by, I believe, 3. And if he finds Oh, he will lose by 4. I think I did the math wrong. If he plays foo or feu on top of planning, he will lose by 5. So not quite there. Alec with a very nice comeback, planning followed by reunited, and he will squeak it out.
Yeah, yeah, nicely done by Alec to come back from this one. Of course, the post bingo draw after planning helped him out a lot, but there was a lot of bingo stuff in the pool at that point, including a blank. So it wasn't totally unreasonable for him to immediately draw into a second bingo there, and yeah,
Yeah,
nicely done.
Alec kind of saving himself with Yar. Ended up being just enough to outrun the bingo, which is always another way to win the game. You don't always have to block everything. You can sometimes score the myriad of points associated with a play like Yar and squeak it out in the end game, even after a bingo, which is what Alec managed to do.
Yeah, exactly. The temptation is always to go extremely hard on board control and just try to guarantee that your opponent can't bingo. With those two spots open at once, that wasn't quite possible for Alec on that turn, so he rightly just went for the points. Was probably thinking that he was going to need those points to outrun if Sammy did have the blank and did bingo. That is in fact what happened, and Alec was just barely able to outrun.
Yes, really nice game. Enjoy seeing such good players on stream. Always enjoy seeing a close game, an interesting end game.
Yeah, we've had some good luck so far, at least in the games I was doing commentary for. A lot of very close games, well fought until the end, not too many blowouts. This was exactly in that mold.
Yeah, and I believe next round we're going to see Josh Castellano, the reigning champion here, face off with Winter, I believe. If
Yeah, I
we're
think that's
sticking
the
with the
plan.
plan, it is Josh Castellano and Winter. So another interesting matchup. Both of them getting a pretty good result at the Boblin Superstars in Albany, New York.
So while we wait for this game to finish up, Matt, let's plug this clock here. What can you tell me about the clock technology being used?
Uh, is this the? I don't actually know. I'm sorry. I wasn't
Oh,
told. This
this
was,
is a software program Ulu, created by Seth Lipkin, who's kind of not just an extremely good Scrabble player, and actually, I think newly minted 2000 or close to it. But
yeah.
in addition to being a top level Scrabble player, doing a ton of stuff for the Scrabble community, one of the things he's done is create this iPhone app Ulu. It
Yes.
has a clock. It's got word lookup. It's got all kinds of cool things. We see him looking very blinged out here. You can see all the things that he's involved with.
Yes. Yes. Ulu has a lookup tool with a couple of different parameters. So you can look up things by a pattern match or an anagram or a sub anagram. It has a word judge where you just enter the word to find the validity. It has a clock, which we're using on this stream because it gets plugged into a computer and it gets sent directly to our YouTube live streaming display, which is really nice. If you enjoy things like the standings and the player stats, we have a guy named Josh Koff, as if there weren't enough Joshes. Josh Koff decided to program for Scrabble.
Yeah, that just add that to the list of Joshes that we have to keep straight. I think we maybe will eventually revert to just referring to him by his last name for differentiation purposes. Sammy's clock is ticking down. I think that's worthwhile for him to just fully calculate this out. If he doesn't see Alex play of Ach or Ach, then he might actually be feeling like he could still win this one.
Yeah, that's a tricky spot. Maybe he's trying to block it, but nothing there scores quite enough. Something like FEE, which would probably be the best blocking choice, isn't going to be quite enough to outrun something.
That actually still just gives back ache, so we would have to come up with another idea even beyond that.
Yeah, something like, yeah, there really isn't anything, is there?
Yeah, I don't see any way to block if he does try to do something sort of more blocking and defensive. Uh, Alec's next best outplay would be something like Acid for 14 points, which is still a pretty good score, and Sammy would be sacrificing quite a lot to block
Yeah,
that XH area.
yeah, I think we'll see Sammy give up and play something like Gof or Foo pretty quickly. He doesn't have a lot of time left, and it is only game one. He probably wants to preserve some mental energy.
Yep, and it's also still early in the tournament, so still a lot of time left, a lot of games left to make up some time, some wins, and he's currently sitting at 5-2 after this one. He'll be 5-3. Alec will be 7-1. He'll be in very good position here early in the tournament.
Yeah, for sure. Alec being one of the perennial names at the top of the Collins division at Nationals. He's already won the NWL division before, and I don't think anyone would be surprised if he pulls it out in Collins as well. Say, Charles, I think only one person has ever actually won both of these. Do you know who that is?
Oh, I would off the top of my head, I could come up with some names, but it would just be a lot of guessing. So I'm gonna ask you to tell me who it is.
It is Adam Logan. A lot of people don't realize this, but Dave Wiegand has never actually won the Collins division here.
Yeah, we've got a pretty strong field of players who could win it or who have won NWL. And Austin Shin has won it multiple times for Collins. But yeah, that is a little bit surprising that Dave Wiegand has not actually pulled it off.
Yeah, it's stacked enough that he's been in position to do it, but never quite pulled it out. He's had a couple of heartbreakers. He's gotten second a couple of times, but never pulled it out. Sammy putting down Fu and Alec putting down his best and only winning play of Atch, and he will win the game by 3 points, assuming they scored correctly.
Yeah, nicely done by Alec. Uh, well, I should say nicely done by both players. I think we saw a lot of strong plays in this game, a lot of sound ideas being
Yeah,
demonstrated.
I would have loved to see a play that was EN. EN on top of G would have been awesome. I think Nigel's playing on the other stream, which is taking away some of our viewers. But if we had EN, we could have at least had Nigel here in spirit. That would have been really fun to see.
I think we might have overhead cam here. Let's see if they're still discussing the game.
I sure did. Glovings. Oop. I chickened out of glovings.
Yeah,
When I-
via NGS.
When I played Vide, I kept GGLN blank.
Oh, gloving.
So glovings is a word.
Yeah. I'll give you 5 points for that. Oh man.
It is a Colin.
Again.
All right, looks like they've exhausted their post-mortem there, just noting that Glovings was available and was not played. So I guess I think we've got standings up. We're getting word from our producer that we could take a quick look at the standings, see where everything stands here. We do know it's one and the same, but we can see Alec is very well positioned to make another run at the CSW championship.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be tight as always. It's a stacked field. We got a lot of the perennial names, a lot of the, will they or won't they win it this time type of people like Alec Sjoholm. It's going to be really exciting. We've got some of the Nigerians here this year: Dennis Ikekarigor, Olawale Fashina, Sammy Okosagah. So a lot of tough competition.
Yeah, and there's a lot of players that are cut off from that list that could definitely make a run up towards the top of the standings. Again, it's very early. We're only on day 2 of a 4-day tournament, the beginning of day 2 of a 4-day tournament. So a lot of time for any of these players to make a run up the standings.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be a long tournament. We're only in game 1 of day 2, but this is actually a 5-day event. So even some of the people closer to the bottom of the standings could certainly still make a run, and we'll probably see some of them on the stream later. But I think for now we're going to take a brief break and get ready for round 9.
Yep, sounds good. So stick around, everybody. We're going to be coming back shortly.